So what's going on? This is Wisdom, and Chaos and I are about to commentate the tournament matches from this afternoon. Chaos, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
All right, so we're gonna begin with Chaos versus CuriousTurtle. This was a double elimination bracket with 4 players. You see 2 of them here. It was also including myself and Khan. So we're going to head and begin with the following match. It looks like we have a CVC Ditto on Forest. Now, Chaos, you're commentating your own match here. How do you feel about the, were you comfortable going into the Chaos Ditto?
Yeah, it was a little early in the morning for me, so I think I started a little bit rusty, but we'll see how it goes.
Would you rather, Chaos Dittos is something like, I don't know, I don't mind it. A few Chaos players, find it, excruciatingly tedious having to position bombers and crawlers just right in the start gameplay. Are you comfortable with all that, or would you rather you find playing order to be your bag?
I like it. There's so much action with the bombers all the time, and
Yeah, see,
small
there we go, right
actions
there.
have
We
huge
got
consequences.
Curious got a nice blast on your crawler, and with burn, that crawler's just gonna make it out alive. So here we go. Now we get to see some bomber play in. Curious is missing that your weak crawler there with his bomber. He's gonna pick it up there though. And then something blew up over here. It seems like CuriousTurtle though is holding the tower for the start of this game.
Yep, definitely had the advantage on the start here.
What do you think it was that puts you in this kind of position? Oh, but you seem to be, you seem to have, no, you weren't able to get anything from that bomber. That would have been a nice blast if you could get both the bomber and the crawler. What do you think it was, though, that gave Curious the tower at the start here?
It was just, poor anticipation of the bombers, making sure you always want to have at most 1 crawler get hit, or if it has to be 2, you can't lose 1, and just too many mistakes.
So you're gonna lose another one right there by your tower, and now it looks like Curious is just gonna be raining bombers and crawlers. He's gonna try to sweep the miner, but you're gonna blast one of his crawlers. That's good. So you're keeping up there. What do you do when you're behind, though, in this kind of a setting? You just a little bit, but you don't have that tower, you don't have that boost in gold. What do you try to go for to approach the mid game?
I think there's sort of 2 things you can do. When you're a little bit behind, you're probably going to be facing, well, knowing my opponent here is Jugs and Deads, and I feel like you have a little bit of a distance advantage. I mean, when his army comes to kill you, you have a little bit of distance because he had to walk the whole way with Dead. So I feel like if you go a little bit heavier Jugs because you're behind, a lot of times you can use those Jugs to pick off a Dead or 2
Right.
and sort of even things up.
Yeah, now speaking about, you said, how he's going, Deads and Jugs, that's some great insight into, understanding your opponent even before the match. If you get something on what he's trying to do here, because you've been able to keep up with him even without the tower. The population difference isn't actually that bad. Curious has his first Dead up by the tower now. He's got a Zug following it, but as regarding in terms of population, you're keeping quite a close game. In fact, now you're only behind a couple in the unit count. You don't have, say, the army right now to match his, but you have the economy. So we'll see if you're able to hold him up until you can push him back enough. And there you go. You're right on with the Zugs. You're now loading Sards. I would have tried to get Sarge earlier, so you're trying to approach on those Deads, and you're gonna have to retreat because you can get Sarge.
Right.
You also have an increasingly high mana count. Are you? I guess you already know, but I'm thinking, yeah. So you have a Medusa out. You like going with the Medusas?
I do. I feel like when you're ahead, you have the option to have a gold heavy build and try to go, Jugs and Deads and win through brute force. But when you're behind, that Medusa can really be an equalizing factor, especially if the response to it by your opponent is not that good. So that's sort of where I was going with that. The other thing is it's hard to have a second row of gold when you're trying to defend yourself. A lot of times, like I was saying, that distance is huge. As an equalizer, he has to walk a whole dead down. In the time it takes to build. To walk down, you can have built a whole nother unit. So it's like a lot of times you might have 1 or 2 extra units because of that distance. And with that Medusa, it's able to equalize a little bit, I think.
Now, one thing I see that you're doing, which is actually working out for you, which I'm surprised though, is you're trying to use juggernauts to clap deads out, but you're not. I mean, those are deads for jugger trades. Every single time you try to approach on one of those deads, you're losing a jugger. And now, right, just then you lost a dead and your Medusa.
Right.
Looks like you pushed in a little too deep with your units. I don't think that was a smart choice here. I'm surprised CuriousSturtle, if he had charge, he would have stopped you stone cold with his juggers, and that would have ended the game much earlier. Because now as you said, you're not able to use that second gold, and you're out of options, even with a Medusa in your back row. So.
Right, and that definitely was a very bad exchange, a sloppy exchange. But the other thing was there was 2 different times when juggers were very low, and I retreated the wrong one, and that's it's a pretty fatal mistake. When you're on your heels, you have the advantage of your bunker, your castle, whatever, being so close, and if you can take advantage of that to get some heals in on really low guys, who are about to die, they can sort of come back in and make an impact right away because it's such a short run. So it's super important when you're behind not to let them get those jugger kills, and that's really partly why those trades were so bad. If I was trading a jugger in the castle for a dead after 2 or 3 trades, I could have been bringing them back out. So I think that cost me for sure.
All right. Well, I'm gonna load game 2 unless do you already have it loaded? Because I'm all set. I'll give you some time to catch up.
Just a second.
All right. We have Rain, Questionable Goat, in the Twitch chat. We have Tay. Who else do we have from viewers? Oh, we got Captain Corpse in here as well. What's up, everyone?
Okay. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, let us begin. So, now both you guys are renowned Chaos players here. What are your opinions on this tournament? I mean, Con plays Chaos. I was the only one going in here order. What are your thoughts on how this tournament was at the finalists being, very Chaos oriented, with 3 of the 4 players using this empire?
Right, it's definitely easier to learn Chaos, and I think that's why there's a lot more Chaos players. So at the higher end, I feel like the amount of time it takes a new player, if they have membership, to rank up to say 2,000 or 2,200, whatever it is, it's just much easier, I suppose. The other thing is a lot of order players are better with order versus order. So in those lower ranks, before you really get in the higher ranks, where people have played both, empires equally. That was a good exchange. A bad exchange for CuriousTurtle, I guess. But yeah, once you're in the higher ranks, people are used to practicing both, but in the lower ranks, you sort of have an implicit advantage with Chaos too, because all your opponents are mostly order, and they're not sure how to counter. So I feel like the lower ranks is
so you agree that many order players don't have the matchup experience to still,
exactly,
even after
right.
a year of Chaos, being out and available, how still many order players don't, they're still struggling with the Empire. Now, one thing I noticed I'm sorry. I just noticed how you're using your bombers more efficiently, and even though Curious is still holding the tower, you haven't taken as much damage on your crawlers this time, and now you're gonna spread them out just like that, and
right. He did hold the tower for a second there, but he has collected very little gold, so that definitely has helped.
You're gonna lose a crawler there though. Now you see you're running higher population, but CuriousTurtle does have, a good crawler count compared to you. Up here you go. You're doing good holding the tower now. Now I noticed even after 2 minutes, neither one of you guys like going for mana. I mean, when I play Chaos, it's around this time. I try to have something out, whether it be, a wing, a dead, a Zug, just one of my mid-tier units
Right.
out on the field. So you're breaking mana first now. Curious Turtle is, I don't know if he's,
It's
behind, but,
right. It's actually been a weakness of mine lately, getting mana out too late, and it's the it's like you were saying before. Some people find it tedious, that crawler bomber exchange. It's so risky to look away from that exchange, even for a second, because if you have a couple bombers or a bomber, a couple crawlers run together into one of their bombers, it can be catastrophic. So a lot of times, it's easy to get a late start on mana, not necessarily as a strategy, just because you're preoccupied with the other exchanges.
right. So keeping a gold focus is now a lot easier, as, with the update of having, the miners just auto select a gold slot after, I think it's just a mere 4 or 5 seconds, so they're not out just waiting to be targeted for gold. Now, one thing that you're doing here though is you have your crawlers out. You must recognize that he's not going. That he is going for a Zug because of the lack of bombers from him.
Right.
You, you weren't you weren't worried about that?
About what?
Well, the Zug here. So you have the poison. That's why. So you have a good advantage there.
No, Curious Turtle has the poison. He started with the dead, and I was gonna say I started with the
That's
Jug
right, that's
and,
your Jug.
and the charge. He started with the dead and the poison. Is there one way or another that you feel, is the better way to go by default, or is there a reason to, start the dead versus the Jugger?
Oh, well, I personally like putting my deads or wings out first, because that's what I like using to try and remove any crawler or bomber threats that might be incoming. Because as you said, I'm more in tune with the way I keep my units, at my base, my miners going, even during the center exchange. I always value, economy management to be more important than, the skirmishes I go through at the tower. Now you're
Right.
retreating.
It looks like the population gap is starting to get up there. With I think there's 2 more miners on the left side, chaos side, my side.
Yeah. Now see, you had to retreat. But again, you're running a larger army. A larger economy. Curious has the army advantage, but he does not have, enough
I don't know if he
population
has
off.
the army.
Ooh, never mind. No, that Zug count is certainly in your favor there.
Right, I had a couple healing up, and I think that was why I had to retreat, because I had some that, if you notice, he had 1 or 2 jugs that died earlier, probably prematurely. He did get them back in time. I had some back in time, and that left me a little behind on the field, but when they come out, it makes all the difference. I think that's one of the things that makes a big difference between, the middle, sort of the good players who are trying to get over the edge. I think retreating those units like a 6 health jug is so valuable. I think that's one of the things that players trying to take that step up really need to focus on.
Yeah, I see. Your deads didn't move forward, but your Zugs were kind of trying to put in work on your own, and you almost lost your Juggernauts to that because your deads didn't step up. Now,
This Medusa, though, over time, if he doesn't have a counter to it, it already killed 1 jug. But Medusa is something that has to be dealt with quickly, or else you can
Yeah, I see you have a second Medusa coming. So you like, when you gain the lead, you just kind of keep the Medusas to prevent, any heavy approaches with Juggernauts. So you have, you're always running a stronger back row, and you prey on the front line. So your back row then once you wipe out the front line, then your back row, since it's dominating from the start, just crushes the back row of the enemy, and that's how you work your way in. So there you go with the ghost. So this should be a game sealer, depending on what you can target with the Medusas, because he doesn't have any other back row support. So that's 2 jugs down, and that's 3 to go in. Now neither one of you
are you talking about the jugs, or are you saying the deads are the back row?
I consider deads to be back row units because deads are slow. You don't put deads out in the front because even while they're tanks, they're not strong doing, against a single target enemy because of their DPS. Deads are there, for the poison and just, to prey on weaker units and to just kind of wear down again the front line.
Right. It was a close game, but it seems like by being able to manage the middle slight economy advantage.
Yeah, it was close at first, but I would say since you were able to get pulled through with that first Medusa, and he didn't quite have an answer for it, building a second one really just solidified how you were going to cut any kind of approach Curious was working with. So, yeah, very well played on your part there. So now I'm going to go ahead and load the third game now, because that makes it 1-1.
So that leaves the score at 1-1.
Yes, and these were best of 5 sets. So Curious and now yourself at 1-1 each have to win 2 games. If you want to.
Right.
So let's see. Where's the?
In this next game, Curious picked Desert. He likes to go for a shorter map. A lot of times in our exchanges, I'm slightly more economy heavy, which you can see in that last map. And his strategy is to be slightly ahead on the army and put the pressure on before the economy can really yield the dividends. Being behind that 1 or 2 units, I think it's something a lot of players know, but generally, the power of your army is the square of the number of units. And so he gets ahead 1 or 2 units and tries to push that advantage, hold the tower with it, which can make up for some economy. It can make up for a couple miners off economy. And then push his advantage before your economy can pay off. So I think it's a smart strategy for him to go to a shorter map because just from the style of play, if you're going to be aggressive with your army, given how slow deads are, shorter map is definitely better.
All right. So one thing I did notice though is that there's a few people in the Twitch chat that are complaining that the game sounds on my live stream were too loud. So I just adjusted them accordingly, so they should be good.
Okay.
Now, Rain asked a question though in the chat. So I guess we can. Are you ready to start the desert game?
Sure.
Okay, let's begin. So Rain asked a question why neither one of you guys, in that I guess in that last game, you didn't get hustle, or you got hustle really late. No, he says that you guys didn't get hustle. I never actually noticed that. Did you opt not to get hustle?
It's something I should have done. I think that hustle has 2 advantages. It makes your miners more efficient. It also makes them stronger. And if you're going to be facing aggression, it's extremely important for the 30% additional health. In terms of the actual...
I'm sorry. So you not getting it was more out of negligence?
No, it's because... Well, so let me just finish, I guess. So if you look at the actual gold return of hustle on close miners, meaning your close 8 miners, it's pretty small. It's a pretty minimal advantage there. So that, you basically have to... if you're considering building hustle just for economy purposes, it doesn't make sense to do until somewhere after you have 10 miners on gold. And I never got beyond 10 miners on gold, so there wasn't really a reason that I had to do it. It's something that I probably should have done, because I didn't want to build any more miners for economy. But I think in general, if you're only going to build hustle for economy reasons, it's something that you do pretty late after, roughly, 4 or 5 miners on mana and 10, maybe to even 11 on gold.
I see. You're controlling tower, and you're also leading the count in miners too. CuriousTurtle just getting out his 6th miner this game, loading his 7th. You have your 7, and you're about to load your 8.
He has taken the tower there, though.
Yeah. You see, you were holding tower, and I happened to look back.
One mistake he made this game a couple times, though, you'll see, is he has the tower, and he doesn't prioritize capitalizing on the gold. He came forward with his couple, crawlers, but if that's not really going to result in miner death, all he's doing is now losing that gold that could have been taken 4 or 5 times by now. That half a miner could be a significant advantage over the course of the game, but he didn't prioritize holding the tower, which I think was a mistake.
Yeah, again, I haven't seen very good bomber placement from him. I mean, he managed to get in and weaken one of your miners, but then he just blew a bomber on one of your crawlers, and now he has no eyes in your base, and that miner that was, close to death that you had is now, approaching, now it is at half health, because Chaos Miners have regen. He is holding or at least preventing, he's
Right, and he won the tower. But it just didn't turn to any dividends for him because it only probably ticked once or twice before my bomber ran forward and put it back to contested.
I don't know. He does have the first jet out. You like opening with the juggernauts though. I think you
It
have
depends on the
recognized how
player.
it.
And you were sort of getting this before. It makes a big difference what your opponent's playing. I think that's something that not all players will experience when you're in preps and tournaments. It's a lot different because there's only so many players that compete in those things. If you know what your opponent's strategy is and you're trying to counter that strategy, it's way better off than sort of playing blind. The big risk is starting with Jug is if the opponent starts wings, you could be in big trouble. So there's certain players who I would never start with the Jug against because they always bring out wings or almost always bring out wings. But with CuriousTurtle, never bringing out wings, it's a pretty safe play to have no anti-air.
Yeah, you think Deads beat out Wings or vice versa?
It depends on the situation, and so much of it has to do with the control. When you look at actual damage against armored units, Deads are better, just DPS wise. And because Jugs and Deads are both armored, from that standpoint, a lot of times Deads make sense. But Wings can be great for single targeting down units. A lot of times, as you know, it's what you kill, not what you damage, that really matters because you don't sit there and a lot of times have a non-stop fight till everything's dead. So, things that are weak can go heal, and with Chaos they can regenerate. I think it depends a lot on basically the competency of both players, but I feel like at the high level, Deads have a slight advantage just because they're more effective against armor.
Now that was a critical blow you took on one of his Deads. However, Curious is going to return by taking out one of your Jugs. Oh, no, you never mind. You're going to keep that Jug, and you're also going to take out yet another Dead. So it seems like even though he was able to press in early, your micro decisions have been paying off as far as what your selected targets and how you go until it's finished. CuriousTurtle has walked away from some of your units that have been low to health, and he has completed the kill. Right then again, he's trying to back off when you have, two weak juggernauts. He does manage to kill one there, but, only because his Deads are retaliating through this. He's being a little cowardly about this. And you just have a wing thrown in the
thing
mix.
is that like we were saying before, that bringing back units, I had a Jug that had a small bar and a Dead that had like half of a bar left, and by not killing either, those units just lived to keep fighting. And
yeah,
there was one of those Jugs he sent back in that had literally no bars, you couldn't even see it, and one Dead hit took it out. At that point, it adds no value to your army. Why not heal it? And it doesn't do anything for the next 45 seconds, but in a minute or so, it's fully healed, and you have a whole other Jug. It's a huge difference. I think it's something that most players, don't focus on that well. It's something I wish I did better, but I think a lot of times that is the difference maker in games, is how well you garrison your units.
Well, especially more with Chaos, because, you don't have Merrick's, but you do have the regen. So, it's easy, even with a poison unit, to just keep it behind, not even to completely garrison, but just keep it close, but, away from danger. So, it's viable the next time you need it, at no matter what health. Because, again, charge is a great resource. It's something you don't need to be close to the enemy to use, like the Spiriton Wall. So, even at a slither of light, you can get a charge and a stun out, sacrifice that unit, but if you're gaining something from it, it's not entirely in vain. And I like how even
it has
with
to be an acceptable sacrifice. Like right there, two Jugs came in that battle. It was a very close battle, and those two Jugs came in, kind of turned the tide of the battle. Now they're back in the castle healing. So if we had still been behind, I mean, those jugs sort of had several lives in that one.
Yeah, I'd say you're able to pull out Medusas, and with the tower control, Curious Turtle, is not going for any Marrows or Medusas of his own. So he's it's almost like every time you're playing it, you go out with equal armies, except you're the one with a Medusa just saying, yes, that unit right there. No, you don't have that unit, and then immediately puts Curious Turtle down. A Zugger, a Dead,
Right.
and that's so destructive. I mean, because now he's playing Ketsup continually throughout the mats, and unless he's not figuring out any ways to remove that Medusa or your front line, so you just you're just waltz up and you immediately put him at an army deficit at every single encounter. That's big.
Right, in that game, the Medusa came out so late that I think the game was already over by that point. But really, he had we were pretty some population, but I think I was a mine or two up in my units that were building, even though we were matched on population. His units were just coming out, and mine were still building. So he was definitely ahead a little bit, and you could see those early battles. He had like a 1, maybe even sometimes 2 unit advantage over me, but it was really the healing, the garrisoning, being on defense like that when you're on your heels. He had the tower. I was afraid he would tower spawn. And that's why I kept pushing for the middle. But really, it was only after garrisoning, jugs several times. I think there was probably 3 or 4 jugs I saved, and he saved 1 or 2. That's really what let me get back in. I think the Medusa was useful, but it was so late that I think what turned that one around was the garrisoning.
All right. Well, we're gonna go into the. This is the 4th game here. So now you are at 2.
So at this point, the score is 2-1.
Yes. And
2-1 chaos.
No, and you went back to desert. Yeah, he took you right back because again, you probably striked swamp and Halloween.
Exactly.
Yep. All right.
And he really had the upper hand that game, and he knew it. So he wanted to come back and try again because he knew that he basically had blown that early.
Yeah, I'd say with how he was playing, this would be the map to go to, and against your style of play, it seems to be more effective. Just you managed to again wear down on his front line, and Curious Turtle hasn't been able to manage anything to deal with, your Medusas. He's not using a Marrow or Medusa of his own. We can go ahead and begin if you have yours loaded.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. So the other thing I noticed though is neither one of you guys, you don't like mixing anything with bombers. I mean, bombers, they provide burn. They deal with clumps. I mean, I see sometimes players try to do crazy amounts of damage with getting a groups of 5 or 6 bombers to take out a back row. But I just like mixing in a bomber with my juggernaut units. So when I approach, I get good damage
Right.
on a group. Do you think are you not doing this because you're not thinking of it, or you guys are more focused on having the juggernaut count out there faster with deads, and that's more important?
Right, well, last game, you actually commentated on a game I played against Rain where I had been using a bunch of bombers, made a huge impact in taking out some of his jugs, and so I definitely see the value in bombers throughout the game. I think bombers are really underutilized in the mid and late game for Chaos versus Chaos. If they're very important. But the thing is, we had some pretty small unit counts there, and I think it's, a lot of times the jugs and deads are going to hit the jugs or the deads, and a lot of our skirmishes there was like, 2 jugs and 2 deads. We kind of were like almost stuck in limbo like that for pretty long, where bombers aren't really that effective, and because I was going for mana, one of the side effects of trying to get that early Medusa is you end up being down on gold, and I don't know that necessarily CuriousTurtle how to counter that with a mage, but
so with your build, you really can't afford to just spend 75 gold now and then because you're trying to save up everything you can for a larger unit to go in with your Medusa.
Right. And the thing is, because he's going to be head on jugs and deads for me a little bit too, keeping my jug count up is really important, right? And the thing is that deads are decently mana expensive between the 100 mana and also the cost of their poison. So
yes.
my jugs and Medusas were kind of my priority, and stopping the jug. The thing is, it's not the 75 gold for the bomber. It's the 8 seconds, I believe it is, to build the bomber.
That's it. Yeah.
Right, and so if you build 2.5 bombers, that's 1 less jug you have, and I just couldn't sacrifice. I was already behind a little bit, I couldn't fall behind another half a jug. That probably would have cost me. So once you get up to like 4 or 5, 4 deads or something like that, running a bomber into them, it's great. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, or 4 jugs even. But by the time we had that many jugs, it was sort of later in the game. I could have possibly used them later, but early would have been really tough because it was such a small amount of units you would hit.
Yeah, Curious Turtle, he's leading in this game with a lot of crawlers. You're gonna manage to
Right.
bomb a few of them, but see, yeah, again, that's a good point. How I think Curious Turtle overestimates, crawlers as far as the CVC Ditto go. Because again, you're keeping more with bombers, and the moment you put your bomber out, crawlers become almost useless because of how weak and susceptible they are to just a blast that takes half the health, and with burn possibly taking more. So
That's true. He's doing a great job of staying competitive, and at this point, he really has the units to hold the middle. But I am prioritizing trying to get that money out of it, which he wasn't doing when he won the middle. So that's a huge difference. But I think that there's a couple players who go heavy crawlers instead of bombers, and they do it very effectively because they always garrison their crawlers. And if you're not losing crawlers and the other guy's burning bombers, 75 gold. Even if you hit 2 crawlers, sometimes even 3, if you don't get a kill, and you're never getting kills out of it, and they can keep you from capping the tower, you're basically just burning through gold, and they're slowly racking up more and more crawlers.
yeah, and again, he sets a bomber to one of your miners, but he doesn't have a following bomber coming for that miner, so that bomber just is a waste. I mean, you don't even have to worry about garrisoning that miner because you recognized he doesn't have any bombers coming, and yeah, that blast, it's not gonna stay there too. I mean, Chaos Miners have regen, so yeah,
And now he's got
making a lot of
2
small
deads.
mistakes. Yeah, 2 deads
I
to
always
2
think these
zones.
exchanges are interesting where he's ahead on deads and I have the jugs because I have a slight advantage right now in terms of population, but also holding the middle that time gave me some gold. With a
It's
Medusa
definitely a
on the way,
population.
right, I had 4, I think, guys on mana when he had 2, and I went to 5 pretty quickly after he went to 3. So that tower let me stay even on gold but ahead on mana, and that's why now I'm gonna have a Medusa for one of his jugs, basically, which is obviously a decent advantage.
Having all those jugs is brutal on a dead army. I mean, I think in this instance it would have been if Curious had gone wings,
Right, and that's what the
you would have been a
danger
lot
being
better off.
predictable is. Right, and I think the thing is, a lot of players when they run in with jugs, they will charge like say 4 jugs at once because they want to make sure that they get a set of hits in before the other guy does. Because a lot of times that second cooldown, you might kill some jugs off and not get it off. But when you're actually trying to hunt down units, get claps on units, charge micro is essentially in many games makes a difference between winning and losing because you use that micro right.
Yeah, you
get
have
those
a charge
kills.
lock on him. That Juggernaut is gonna die. I'm
Right,
surprised you didn't
and
get the other one.
with those deads earlier, that made a huge difference. Now I have no deads in this whole game. I mean, I have 2 back there, I guess, but
You don't need
those
them.
5
You're
jugs
running the Juggernauts with charge. You're getting stuns. You have a Medusa to run in there. You see a healthy unit, you just take it, and that's how you're playing right now. You don't even need the deads, and since the deads are so slow anyway, you want to get in there now before he has a chance to build up anything to wall your Juggernauts out.
Right, and just the staggering of those. If I had not been staggering or didn't have charge, and he was kiting those deads, as we saw in earlier games, so I was struggling with these exchanges. It was like a dead for a jug, which is a really bad exchange. The only reason it works is if you're able to use your charge right, and get the charge micro down, then you can kill that dead way faster than he can kill your jug, and that's really where jugs can overpower dead. So charge micro basically, I think, is what allows you to go heavy jugs. If you're gonna charge all at once, the deads will beat the deads and jugs mix will beat the deads almost every time because you can just run that one dead and the jugs are only hitting half the time while all those other deads are hitting full time. So I think that really is something that
Yeah, Curious
people
even
who are trying to
admits
get
here
better
his
on
bomber
this.
control is off this game. Yeah,
It was, but he actually did okay in the beginning. I mean, he had 2 deads, and he had 2 deads and a jug in the middle when I had 2 jugs in the middle. So he was doing fine. I was more heavily invested in mana, but this one ended up not being that close, and it was because those deads went down really quick because the charge. And he also has a responsibility to try to counter the charge micro by putting a jug, where the fleeing dead is. But he kept his jug on the wrong side. He kept it on the far side. So his jug was hitting me from behind while my guys were chasing his. dead. So once his guy swung and was standing still for a second, I was always able to get a charge in with a guaranteed hit on a dead. And the hardest thing with charge is that you kind of hit whoever's there. It's really hard a lot of times, to control exactly who you're hitting. So he wasn't really playing good defense, and that sort of opened up his deads to getting killed way too quickly.
Hmm.